Yeah, yeah, yeah. Welcome to Beyond the Block, everything crypto. Welcome to Beyond the Block, everything crypto.
Well, that's a matter of debate. Some environmental groups argue that BlackRock's engagement hasn't produced significant change
Right.
and that divestment is the only way to truly pressure these companies to act. There have been high-profile campaigns targeting BlackRock, accusing them of hypocrisy, and demanding they divest from fossil fuels entirely.
It sounds like BlackRock is caught in a tug-of-war between their financial interests and the demands of those who want them to take a stronger stance on climate change.
Exactly. And it's not just about fossil fuels. Their sheer size and influence have earned them the label of shadow bank by some.
Shadow bank. What does that even mean in this context?
It's a term used to describe financial institutions that perform bank-like functions,
Okay.
but operate outside the traditional regulatory framework of banks.
So they're wielding enormous financial power, but aren't necessarily subject to the same level of oversight as traditional banks.
That's the concern. It's led to calls for greater regulation of BlackRock and other asset management giants to ensure stability and fairness in the financial system.
Makes sense. But even with stricter regulations, wouldn't their sheer size still give them an outsized influence on markets?
It likely would, and that brings us to another criticism, the concept of common ownership.
Common ownership. I'm not familiar with that term.
It refers to a situation where large institutional investors like BlackRock
Okay.
hold significant stakes in multiple companies within the same industry.
So they could be the top shareholder in, say, two competing airlines.
Precisely, and that's where the concern arises.
Yeah.
Some argue that common ownership can stifle competition, leading to higher prices for consumers and less incentive for companies to innovate.
That's not good for anyone except maybe the investors. But wouldn't these companies still want to outperform each other to maximize their profits?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
But when a single investor like BlackRock owns substantial portions of both companies,
Right.
there's less pressure to engage in fierce competition.
Right.
They might even subtly encourage cooperation,
Interesting.
which could ultimately harm consumers.
It sounds like they're subtly manipulating the market in their favor without technically doing anything illegal.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right.
While it's difficult to prove definitively, it's a dynamic that regulators and policymakers are watching closely.
We've talked about their controversial investments in fossil fuels,
Right.
their role as a shadow bank, and this issue of common ownership. What other areas have sparked debate?
Well, their recent expansion into China has also generated mixed reactions.
China. That definitely adds another layer to this complex puzzle.
In 2021, BlackRock achieved a significant milestone, becoming the first foreign firm allowed to operate a wholly owned mutual fund business in China.
I can only imagine the vast potential they see in tapping into the world's second largest economy.
Yeah.
But you said there were mixed reactions.
Yes, while some see it as a smart business move, others view it with apprehension.
Okay.
Billionaire investor George Soros, for instance.
Called it a tragic mistake,
Wow.
arguing that it could have negative implications for U.S. national security.
That's quite a stark warning from someone like George Soros.
Oh, yeah.
What are his concerns specifically?
Soros believes that directing investments into China could inadvertently bolster the Chinese Communist Party and undermine the interests of the U.S. and other democratic nations.
So it's not just about financial returns. There are geopolitical risks to consider as well.
Absolutely. And those risks are further heightened by allegations of human rights abuses in China,
Right,
particularly targeting the Uyghur population in Xinjiang province.
right. Those allegations have been widely reported, and it raises ethical questions for any company doing business in China, especially one like BlackRock that claims to prioritize ESG factors.
It's a thorny issue and one that BlackRock has faced criticism for.
Yeah.
They maintain that they engage with companies to encourage better practices, but some argue that this is insufficient and that they should divest from companies with questionable human rights records. So it's that same balancing act we discussed earlier, trying to reconcile their pursuit of profit with their commitment to ethical principles.
Exactly. It's a tightrope walk, especially when navigating the complexities of a country like China.
It's a lot to grapple with, and I think our listeners deserve a moment to digest all this information before we dive into the specifics of BlackRock's activities in China. We'll be back after a brief pause to unpack those details.
So we spent a lot of time in this episode exploring the world of BlackRock,
We have.
tracing their rise from a startup focused on risk management
Yeah.
to a financial behemoth managing trillions.
Right.
Their influence is undeniable.
Yeah.
And as we've seen, it hasn't come without controversy.
True.
Now let's delve deeper into their expansion into China.
Okay, yeah. BlackRock's foray into China is a prime example of the tightrope they walk between financial opportunities and geopolitical complexities.
Right.
They see enormous potential in the Chinese market.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned earlier, critics like George Soros
Have voiced strong concerns about the implications for U.S. interests and even national security.
It's a delicate situation, to say the least. What exactly are the criticisms surrounding BlackRock's activities in China?
Well, one of the main concerns is that by investing heavily in Chinese companies, BlackRock may inadvertently be supporting a regime that is becoming increasingly adversarial to the U.S. and other Western democracies.
Right.
There are worries that these investments could bolster China's economic and political power, potentially at the expense of U.S. interests.
So it's not just about potential financial returns. There are broader geopolitical ramifications to consider.
Precisely, and those concerns are amplified by the allegations of human rights abuses perpetrated by the Chinese government,
Right.
particularly against the Uyghur population in Xinjiang province.
Right. Those allegations are incredibly serious and raise ethical questions for any company doing business in China,
Yeah.
especially one like BlackRock that claims to prioritize ESG factors. How do they reconcile investing in a country facing such accusations with their commitment to social responsibility?
That's the million-dollar question. And BlackRock has faced a wave of criticism for their perceived lack of action on this front.
Okay.
They maintain that they engage with companies to encourage better practices. But many argue that this approach is insufficient, calling for them to divest from companies complicit in human rights abuses.
It circles back to that ongoing tension between their commitment to ESG and the realities of operating in a complex global marketplace.
It does.
Do you think BlackRock underestimates the reputational risk associated with their investments in China?
It's hard to say they're undoubtedly aware of the criticism.
Right.
But they've also made it clear that they see China as a critical market for their future growth.
Yeah.
It's a strategic gamble with high stakes on both sides.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating dilemma as we wrap up our deep dive into BlackRock.
Yeah.
What key takeaway should our listeners keep in mind?
First and foremost, BlackRock is an incredibly powerful force in the global financial system.
Absolutely.
Their decisions have far-reaching consequences impacting markets, companies, and even geopolitical dynamics.
It's been eye-opening to explore the various aspects of their operations,
Yeah.
from their expertise in risk management and their popular iShares ETFs to their controversial investments in fossil fuels and their expansion into China.
Right.
Their story highlights the complexities of modern finance, where ethical considerations, economic realities, and geopolitical tensions often collide.
They do.
It's a reminder that we should all be paying attention to the activities of these financial giants
Yeah.
and understanding how their decisions impact our lives,
Absolutely.
whether directly through our investments or indirectly through the broader economic and political landscape.
True.
Knowledge is power, and this deep dive has hopefully equipped our listeners with a more nuanced understanding of BlackRock and the role they play in shaping our world.
I hope so.
Well said. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics, asking tough questions, and forming your own informed opinions. The story of BlackRock is still being written, and its future chapters will undoubtedly shape the financial world for years to come. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating exploration of a topic shaping our world.
Everything crypto.